Hi everyone. Today I'll be discussing family dynamics, conflict, and resilience in the face of COVID-19. Think back to when you first heard about the COVID-19 shutdowns. Where were you? Who were you staying with? How did it impact your family, finances, job, or education? How did it impact your relationships with friends, family, and peers? Today I'll be discussing briefly what family dynamics are, how COVID-19 affected family dynamics, both positively and negatively, and how we can overcome these long-term effects as we age. Firstly, let's start by defining family dynamics, or relationships, so we can fully understand the impact of COVID-19 on these relationships. Family dynamics are defined by the relationships we have with who we consider to be our family, as well as the various things and circumstances that mold our interactions with our family members. These family relationships continuously play a role throughout our lives, either directly or indirectly. Family dynamics also play an important role in our development as children. When we are growing up, the relationship we have with our parents often determines how we interact with and bond with our romantic partners, siblings, and even peers. Even in late adulthood, we still cultivate family relationships with our own children if we decide to have them, and in taking care of our own parents in old age. This often involves a term we call caregiving. It should be noted that since we rely on our families for emotional, physical, and economic support, they tend to further shape and influence our attachment styles or the way we feel secure, safe, or trusting, or on the contrary, a lack of safety, security, or trust in a relationship. For example, just to understand the importance of family relationships, we have seen that increased parental support leads to better self-esteem, social skills, academic achievement, and adaptability. In general, secure family relationships and attachment provides us with feelings of support and safety, whereas stressful ones often involve conflict and a lack of support. With that being said, let's see how COVID-19 affected family dynamics. COVID-19 led to many unprecedented circumstances, one of which being a lockdown mandate, in which many people had to stay with their family for long periods of time, and widespread shutdowns that prevented people from traveling. Now that we understand what and how important family relationships are, let's see how COVID-19 impacted them. Overall, we have seen the economic difficulties, unemployment and job loss, food insecurity, and worsening mental health and stress reported in many families, which has been noted to have permanently altered family life. Many facets of family dynamics, like family well-being, children's education, and family resilience, have been changed substantially by COVID-19. Additionally, among the amount of stressors present from the pandemic, we saw an increase in domestic violence and child abuse and an increase in substance abuse, such as with alcohol. Furthermore, families that were already experiencing financial distress experienced much more severe effects as a result of the complications from the pandemic. This found that parents' depressive symptoms, stress, and sense of hope, and interactions with children were negatively affected, particularly when unemployment or a loss of income occurred. Finally, in some cases, people were separated from their families for long periods of time, leading to a sense of isolation and lower perceived social support and interactions with their family members. Unfortunately, it should also be noted that COVID-19 highlighted many inequalities in the severity with which different families were affected. If we look at this graphic here, we can see that people of color tended to be more highly affected, especially in terms of mortality. People of color were also significantly more affected by the family stress caused by the pandemic. Despite these negative effects, there are still some rare but notable positives that came out of the pandemic for some families. Believe it or not, there were some positive effects found by multiple studies despite the widely publicized and prevalent negative effects. In some cases, families reported more frequent positive interactions with family members. Some families also reported being closer to other family members as a result of the lockdown. And in another study, parents reported reading more to their children and often had more shared family dinners with their family. Even more so, Some people's relationships were reported to have improved with their family and peers as a result of the shelter-in-place mandate. However, it should be clear that these positive outcomes were more often associated with advantageous and privileged sectors of our society. Specifically, families with higher income, family stability, and white-collar jobs that offered more flexible work schedules. Finally, when discussing how family relationships were shaped by the pandemic, we must consider how this may have impacted different age groups. While the effects of COVID-19 on long-term development throughout the lifespan are not completely understood yet, we can glean potential impacts and differences by examining the effects on each generation. The youngest generations, who already tend to have higher rates of anxiety and depression, had the highest instances of worsening mental health as a result of the pandemic, while surprisingly, older generations had the least instances of worsening mental health despite being one of the most vulnerable populations during the pandemic. Some believe this may be due to the fact that they were least affected by the social upheaval and lifestyle changes during these periods. Contrary to previous research, it's also been found that younger generations are more concerned about their lifestyles and social relationships than older generations. Despite resilience being largely shaped by social support in older adults. Additionally, older generations were more concerned about their own health, whereas younger generations were more concerned about their relatives' health. In relation to family dynamics, we saw, as previously mentioned, higher instances of domestic violence, both in intimate partner relationships and with parents and children. Furthermore, we have seen children and adolescent relationships with parents, peers, and siblings be impacted negatively and in some cases positively from the pandemic. Additionally, caregivers of older adults during COVID-19 experienced substantial stress, especially as concerns of infecting relatives and burdens in taking care of relatives among the many other stressors present during the pandemic grew. Long term, we have found this will most severely impact children, especially vulnerable children, and families, as well as young people. For many, while the pandemic has ended and many have since recovered from COVID-19, the invisible resiliency and things like mental difficulties as a result of lockdowns and acute infections are likely to be a long-term effect for many people. Studies have also shown sustained mental health effects, including anxiety, depression, trauma, and sleep disturbances in multiple follow-ups with the same people. Despite these long-term effects, there are some ways to cope with them and how they may have altered our psychology and family relationships. When parents positively adapt to life changes, children may also be positively impacted and learn from their behaviors. A big part of overcoming the long-term effects can be buffered by parental and family support. Furthermore, resilience can be cultivated by mothers with greater beliefs in their ability to succeed, or things like self-efficacy, and mothers with lower work-life conflict. Some societal factors that may reduce negative long-term impacts would be increased government and community support of resources. All of these factors have been shown to relate to resiliency in overcoming drastic obstacles like COVID-19, which will affect the way our societies and families function well into later life. While we may feel the effects of COVID-19 for a long time, the resiliency of human beings and the power of our relationships, our family relationships especially, to help us heal should never be doubted.